Well, I knew they were opening the Disney Vault for Disney+, but these new Avengers Endgame deleted scenes caught me way off guard. They reveal a lot about the filmmaking process, both how Mark Ruffalo grimaces when he's playing the Hulk, and how the final film came together. But most of all, they reveal why no one can agree on what was happening in Endgame's final scene. This is Screen Crush. So let's talk about the deleted scenes where Bruce meets the Ancient One. Now, in the final movie, when Bruce arrives, the Ancient One is busy fighting off Chitauri attackers. Now, I love this little detail because it explained the supposed plot hole of why the Sorcerer Supreme didn't help during the Battle of New York, when it's her job to defend the Earth.
Heroes like the Avengers protect the world from physical dangers. We sorcerers safeguarded against more mystical threats.
Turns out, she was helping. But in this version, she was lounging on the roof. And actually, this makes more sense. The Ancient One would have seen, with the Time Stone, that the Avengers won the Battle of New York, so she wouldn't have to interfere. Unless in the original movie, she's just fighting them off so they don't attack the Sanctum. Now, I also like the behind-the-scenes look this gives us, because this scene was from earlier in the film. They already completed a rough animatic of the Hulk, and you can see they just barely blurred out Mark Ruffalo's face cam. Now, in the final film, Bruce tries to take the stone and Tilda Swinton knocks him into his astral form. In the audio commentary, the Russo brothers say that they did this to kind of knock him back on his heels and get him out of his superhero form. And it works brilliantly by introducing conflict into the scene. While everyone else is on action side missions, this becomes an interlude where he has to persuade her to hand over the stone because he's no match for her physically. So anyways, in the second scene, the Ancient One is barbecuing. She mentions that Thanos was always a potential problem and defends her decision to not interfere with every possible threat that could occur, including Bruce's original Gamma experiments. Now, this sounds like a cop-out. Why wouldn't the Ancient One stop the destruction of half the universe? But remember, she was never able to see past her own death.
I've spent so many years peering through time, looking at this exact moment, but I can't see past it.
So maybe, had she known, she would have stopped Thanos. Also in the deleted scene, she already knows that Bruce needs the Time Stone.
Doesn't know anything about the Time Stone.
Now this is actually a huge change in how the movie explains time travel. In the final film, she did not know that Bruce was coming for the stone.
What do you want from him?
That, actually.
Ah!
This is because time travel existed outside the normal flow of time and created branching realities.
Remove one of the stones, and that flow splits.
But in this scene, she does know why Bruce is here, implying that she's seen this future moment with the Time Stone. That would mean that, in the original screenplay, time is a closed loop. Everything that could happen has already been written. Basically, there are three kinds of theoretical time travel. One is like Back to the Future, where interfering in the past changes the future. Two, that all of time exists on a closed loop or a flat circle. This is like the movie Interstellar, when beings from the future help humanity create themselves. And the third is what we saw in Endgame. Basically, every time the Avengers time travel, they create a different timeline. And this is also the way it is in the comics, where Dr. Doom's time machine creates a new reality every time he uses it. Also, it was a nice way to have a time travel movie without worrying about altering the timeline. I mean, the X-Men franchise got really bogged down in this, so it's good that the MCU avoided it. In the final film, Bruce explains how time travel works before the Avengers actually time travel.
Think about it. If you travel to the past, that past becomes your future, and your former present becomes the past, which can't now be changed by your new future.
Exactly.
Now, this is essential for the audience and the team.
Back to the Future is a bunch of bullshit.
First, we need to know how the rules of time travel work in this universe. Or, for instance, after Loki ran away, we'd be expecting the whole timeline to change. But also, explaining time travel at this point shows that the Avengers aren't recklessly altering time, because it's impossible. Now, in the deleted scene, Bruce brings this up to the Ancient One like they hadn't considered the repercussions of time travel before.
If we take the stones, we alter time, and we'll totally screw up our present day even worse than it already is.
Then she's the one who gives the same explanation that he ended up giving in the final film.
If you travel to the past from your present, then that past becomes your future, and your former present becomes the past.
So I think that moving the time travel explanation was a great move. But when Bruce realizes they can't change their present, he thinks their mission can't succeed. But then she clarifies with a new time travel rule.
If someone dies, they will always die. Death is irreversible.
Now, it would have been nice to have kept this in because it would explain why they couldn't just bring Natasha back from the past. But also, it would mean that they couldn't make the Loki spinoff on Disney Plus because the version of Loki featured in that show is the same one who escaped in Endgame. So had this remained part of continuity, then Gamora couldn't return in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But then the Ancient One tells him that the people who were snapped away did not die. They were willed out of existence. Again, this would have been really nice to explain why Bruce didn't snap other people back, like Pietro, Coulson, Tony, or Natasha. And this also adds meaning to something he says later on.
You know, I tried. When I had the gauntlet, the stones, I really tried to bring her back.
Then she explains branching realities to Bruce in a more complicated way than we saw in the final film. She talks about creating multiple vulnerable timelines, not just one. Then, when Banner returns the stones, the new timelines are clipped like the branches of a tree.
Don't worry, Bruce. Clip all the branches.
Now this would have completely changed the movie, the ending, and the whole MCU moving forward. Let me explain how. This is implying that the stones would have had to have been returned at the exact moment they were taken so they caused no disruption in the timeline. Before, taking the stones created alternate realities, but in this version, returning them makes those realities cease to exist. Now this causes so many problems with the ending of the movie. In the director's commentary, the Russos say the reason they wanted the stones to be returned was so Steve could go back and have his dance with Peggy. So they had their ending in mind first and then wrote everything to accommodate that. But if Steve returning the stones ended the separate realities, then when he traveled back to be with Peggy, he still would have had to have been a part of this reality. The main reality, not some alternate timeline where the two of them lived happily ever after. From the moment the film was released, the filmmakers have disagreed on the film's ending. The Russo brothers said that Steve lived in an alternate timeline, then somehow returned to the main MCU to give Sam his shield, while the screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely said that Steve was actually living in the MCU's main reality all along.
What?
Now, if this were true, then it meant that Steve let Bucky be tortured by Hydra. He hid himself inside for decades so no one would know that Captain America was alive, so there's no grocery store shopping or going to the movies. And when his younger self visits Peggy, he would have been hiding in the next room. But the writers doubled down on this idea, saying that they had it in mind for a long time, and that's why they never revealed who Peggy's husband was. They even endorsed a fan theory that this guy at Peggy's funeral was old Steve. The thing is, according to their original draft, these nutcase scenarios would have had to have been true, because in this version, there is only one timeline after the stones are returned. So this changes the MCU from a branching reality timeline to a closed-loop timeline, where time travel doesn't actually matter because everyone's living in the reality they would have lived in all along.
What?
What version of the MCU's timeline do you like better? Should old Steve have been in the MCU the entire time, or do you like the alternate reality theory? Or are you just entirely confused and want me to explain more in the comments? Thanks for watching. If it's your first time here, please subscribe. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Arey.